Welcome to Albuquerque Real Estate Talk. This week, we're going to talk about surveys and why you get them and what they're all about on a home purchase, as well as the Albuquerque Home Show is this weekend. We'll get into that. Story of Rio Rancho. There was a great story on that. We'll talk about that, as well as home affordability, median time that people stay in their home. The tenure is more than 10 years now.
And we're going to talk about top 10 home features in Albuquerque that add value, according to a recent report. And that'll be very interesting.
Tracy, it is episode 481. It's mid or almost end of February 2024. It's Tego and Tracy Venturi Group of Real Broker, and you can reach us at 505-448-8888. All right, Tracy, let's jump right into the first and foremost thing is the home show is this weekend. So the Albuquerque Home Show is at the state fairgrounds, or we don't call it the state fairgrounds.
Expo, New Mexico.
That's right. We don't call it the fairgrounds anymore.
Yeah. Boy, we used to love to do that when our kids were little, go to the home shows, and we were about to build our house, and we got all sorts of great ideas and had a good time. So
yeah, so just Google it, Albuquerque Home Show. You can, I believe tickets are free. Admission is free. However, you do have to pay to park at the expo.
Yeah. Typical.
Yeah. But yeah, check it out. It should be really interesting if you're a homeowner and you're just kind of curious what products, what services are available to you. It's always a good one to go and check out. So that's right. This weekend.
Also this weekend, we've got a lot of open houses. What I would suggest to all of you is get on our website, welcomehomeabq.com. We have a tab for open houses, so it will show all of the open houses from all realtors that have put them in the multiple listing service. So you won't be limited just to the ones Venturi Realty Group is holding open, but everything in the metro area that's been listed as having an open house this weekend. However, we would love to put that route together for you and get you inside homes that might not be open. So if that's the case, give us a ring and we can put that together for you.
Great, Tracy. We had an opportunity to have a title inspector in our office here last week, or title underwriter is his.
Title examiner?
Examiner, thank you. So what that is, that's the person that makes the decision on title insurance for a property. And just as a refresher, title insurance is an insurance policy that guarantees you own the property that you are purchasing, and they're backing that you have proper ownership of that. But one of the things he brought up and sounds like is one of the bigger issues that come up is surveys not being done, or surveys missing information, and then the different types of surveys. So survey is the
land survey you're talking about, not a questionnaire, a land survey.
Correct. Yeah. And so that means that's where somebody that's licensed to do this work goes out, looks at the property and or measures the property to verify it is what it is and it is where it's supposed to be. But there's two different types of surveys that we generally see. I mean, there's more than the two, but let's just talk about the two, the ILR and then the stakes survey.
And so an ILR is an improvement location report. And on every written improvement location report, it says this is not a survey. This is not a survey. So, but that's typically what we see people getting as they're showing the lot lines and the property, the building on the property. That's what's most common when we work with residential real estate.
Yeah. And so what that means is the improvement location report is exactly what it is. It's somebody verifying that the improvements are on the property. So that's the house, that's any patios, any structures, even walls are there. It could be also easements or encroachments as well.
Right. And it's really important because what we know from doing real estate for 20 some years and having great resources like that title examiner come in and talk to us is it's not that unusual to have a problem where a fence isn't really the property line, or the neighbor's swimming pool is actually partially on your land, or there's certain areas, when you're buying a house, there's certain areas that maybe are where you aren't supposed to build something. There's some easements there, maybe for utilities or things. So
or setbacks, which is a common thing, meaning, okay, you can't build within 5 feet of the side property line or 20 feet of the front property line or things like that. So another thing very common in New Mexico and especially some of the kind of maybe more rural areas, valley, and some other locations is don't trust what the fence is.
Right.
Don't trust the fence. The fence doesn't mean that is the property line. That is not always the case.
Right. Yep. And if for some reason you're buying a piece of property, maybe it's Placitas or it's Corrales or the Valley somewhere or East Mountains, and your fence, maybe the neighbor's fence is really on your property and they're using that land, then we need to get together and put some agreements together so that it doesn't become forever somebody else's land.
Right.
So
the other type of survey, we've kind of been talking about the ILR here, but the other is, of course, the staked survey.
They call it a staked boundary survey.
And so what, a staked boundary survey, again, exactly what it says. It's where somebody that's a licensed surveyor goes out and actually locates the corners of the property. So you know exactly where the property lines are. Many times you'll find the old markers. It could be a piece of rebar. It could be a stake. It could be something else. However, that's still, until you actually have a survey physically go out there, do the measurements with all their fancy equipment to make sure it's super important, especially again in the rural areas for sure.
So two things about that. If you've had found the pins in the ground, the metal pins, sometimes there's a big stake there with a flag on it just to help find it. But if you have those on your property, good thing to do would be to flag them so that they don't get lost, they don't get pulled out, that they can easily be found so that those are your corners. The other thing is the fence line, so making sure if you get an improvement location report and you decide you're going to add fencing or walls or something, that you get pins in the corners so that this is really the lot line, right?
Yeah.
Because we've had people put up walls where they thought the line was based on natural the land, right?
Landmarks, yeah.
Landmarks or what seemed logical, and then we find out later that it wasn't the corners. So you don't want to make that mistake.
Yeah, and the other thing is there'll be situations where there's been a fence there for 50 years and everybody just thought that's where the property line was. So it's always pretty important to get that stuff verified when you're buying property.
And one last thing on land surveys is keep a copy of that written report, because if you go to refinance your property at some point and it's still accurate, you haven't added any extra structures or things to it, you can reuse it and save yourself a little bit of money. Typically.
Yeah. Oh. All right. Tracy, this article, this KO. Okay. So Rio Rancho, we all are familiar with, Rio Rancho that live here in New Mexico. Rio Rancho is a community that it's got a really interesting history because let's be honest, it was a land scam back in the day. So, AMREP, which is American Realty and Petroleum Corporation, bought 55,000 acres back in the 60s, and that's when the whole thing kind of kicked off. But anyway, KOAT did a great article on this, as well as a news report on it. So you can find both of them on KOAT website.
Yeah. So Tego, we know Rio Rancho really well. Our office is close by. We've sold a lot of properties in Rio Rancho. And like me personally, I think I've been involved in over 200 transactions of land in Rio Rancho, which means that's why I had to get an SUV, right? Because I was off-road a lot, finding lots in Rio Rancho. It really did help because it's pretty far out there all the way, to the escarpment. But what's interesting is how it's grown, right? By like 1977, there was, very few people living there, right? And then Intel came along and started out very small and then went to this huge fab, which really brought jobs. What we know though, and the story points out that still 57,000 people living in Rio Rancho are in the job market, right? In the labor force, but there's only 20,000 that actually work in Rio Rancho. And some people from Albuquerque go to Rio Rancho to work. So
Yeah.
what that means is
We see that every day at our office on Alameda.
Right.
Yeah,
What that
both
means
directions.
is
Yes.
a lot of people come down that hill every day to go to work somewhere not in Rio Rancho. So
Right.
they really, are working on community or developing other jobs and employers for Rio Rancho. It's interesting because in the article they do talk to a few people that we know in the real estate community, other realtors who've been there and lived there and have seen it change. So it's kind of exciting. It's a well done article.
Yeah, it's an interesting story because it did kind of start out with kind of a shady, let's call it, start, because it was, this kind of mass mail, $10 down, $10 a month, get your little piece of heaven in the West. And they were hitting up people back East to buy this land. And, there's that classic movie, Glenn Ross, where they're selling real estate, and they use Rio Rancho as the example. The thing is, though, it's now grown into a really great city, and it's known for right now
low crime, good schools.
I know. I was going to say this is not advice. We're just saying based on the statistics, it's known for good schools, low crime, compared to other areas.
Originally, Tego, it was touted as a retirement place. That's how they were sort of selling it, right? They were going and having these dinner parties back east, and a lot of New Yorkers moved out. Now,
you know what one of the slogans were back in the day in their marketing brochures was "Your half acre of heaven in Rio Rancho Estates."
Yeah, and there was really not much there. The photos. So we have some of the original marketing materials since we were doing a lot of Rio Rancho business. And they had the pictures of people with fishing poles next to the river and people in swimming pools and public parks and tennis courts and things. And none of that existed, right? They had showed people playing alongside our river. Like that didn't happen.
Well, actually, it was the lake. What's the lake up in the Jemez?
Heron?
No, not Heron. I can't. Sorry.
Anyway,
Fenton.
Fenton.
Yeah, Fenton. It's they have an image like Fenton Lake is just like right there,
right?
In some of their marketing stuff. So one last thing I wanted to hit on this, because there is there's a story that says some of the executives with AmRep, which was the company, went to prison.
Right.
The thing that's interesting about that story, it has nothing to do with the actual land sales. Everybody just kind of assumes that that's what it was about, but it was actually just the way they were doing business and cooking the books, basically. And it was securities fraud is really what they ended up getting charged with. Now, their reputation probably didn't help them in their defense. The whole land thing. But anyway, it's interesting. It's an interesting story, and it was great to see KOA, do a deep dive on this.
KOAT.
Yeah, KOAT. Yes.
Tego, let me finish. So it started out kind of like to be a retirement community, and it slowly switched because it was more affordable housing than Albuquerque, and it became a place where younger families could go. And so it kind of switched very quickly once houses started going up and being affordable and people could commute into Albuquerque. They're quoted, one of them saying, it was a 20-minute drive to the airport back when they moved there, which, that's changed. But, it's it's still a great place.
Interesting thing on that is that at Rio Rancho, median price for homes and price per square foot is higher than Albuquerque. Now, you have to take into account Albuquerque is much larger and there's much older homes and all that stuff. But it is interesting that you do see a higher price now in Rio Rancho on average than you do for city of Albuquerque proper.
So congratulations to all of you who bought into Rio Rancho a few years ago, because prices are up. So interesting story.
Yeah, no, it is. And it was great to see that.
Yeah. So do we talk about our affordable housing problem again? Another story?
Yeah, I'm afraid this just keeps resurfacing because it's not going away.
Right.
So a couple weeks ago, Tracy, we did we did a deep
We did
dive.
a whole show on
Just housing affordability in New Mexico, housing affordability in general, some of the solutions, some of the tools and products that are available to help people, mortgage products, purchase products, all different kinds of things, homes, voucher programs or loan assistance programs like the Mortgage Finance Authority programs. But it's not going away. And so there was a story also. This was from the Journal, Stephen Hamway, who does a lot of housing reporting. They said that the New Mexico Housing Coalition did a study and found that we are 32,000 units short of what is needed to house the poorest residents, and it's due to shortage of units. And it also revealed that 218,000 households in the state are considered cost burdened, meaning that more than 30% of their income is going toward their housing expenses.
Yep. And that number of 32,000 affordable housing units short is just the affordable housing units short we are. Not all the rest of the housing units we're short that are unaffordable.
Yeah. And
say.
just to put a perspective on this, so it said 218,000 are cost burdened. There's about 800 or so thousand housing units in New Mexico. So say about 25% of people are housing cost burdened in New Mexico. And that's not just purchase. This includes people renting as well.
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. People renting,
right
paying more than 30% of what they make for whatever their housing is.
Well, and of course, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but more people are cost burdened on the renting side than they are on the purchase side.
Yep.
Shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but that is definitely the case on that.
So interesting article, Tego. Top 10 home features in Albuquerque that add value.
You were yelling at this one.
Well, I was excited to see what a survey said the top 10 home features in Albuquerque are that add value. They add value to your home, right? So I was thinking, wow, this is going to be interesting. Well, it is interesting, but I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to blow through them real quick. Number 1, sprinkler system. Number 2, Jack and Jill bathroom. Number 3, French doors. Modern architecture, 1-story, tile backsplash, large pantry, basketball court, large walk-in closet, and jacuzzi. I mean, come on. Tile backslash adds value. I mean, how much value? But a basketball court? Like, how many houses in Albuquerque have a basketball court?
Cooper used to have a house in Corrales.
Yeah, Michael Cooper did, but I don't think he had a vineyard. I don't think he had a basketball court. So then there's another category, the most popular. These home features and designs appeared to be in most homes for sale and most popular. An office, new construction, a basement.
In New Mexico?
Yeah, we have very few basements. Natural gas utilities, fireplace, family room, pool, master bedroom, fence, and tile.
I think what this tells me, it illustrates that data can't tell you everything. Just raw data can't answer very specific questions, because what I think they did is this is Redfin, and they looked at all the homes for sale, and they looked at what features were selected in
AI probably looked at.
Exactly. So they looked at the features of the homes that were for sale, homes that sold, and so they put together the survey based on just those things that they found when they were looking at all the listings. And so we know that that's not very accurate. It's interesting, but we also know that there's so much more to it until you actually get in the house, and there's just things that are these intrinsic things that you can't just say, oh, it has tile backsplash, so it's worth more.
Right. Well, and what was I expecting when I opened the article, of what home features added value? I think it was going to be more of, solid surface countertops, custom cabinetry,
And that's what we've seen over the years. The remodeling council, I think, is the group, the organization, and they always do that, and they always put together information on that, and it's always really the same things.
Right.
It's kitchen upgrade if the kitchen is old and tired. It doesn't mean that if it's a decent kitchen and you spend 300 $30,000 to upgrade, it doesn't mean you're going to get it. But if you got a really old tired kitchen and the neighborhood supports it and you spend 30,000 on that kitchen, you're probably going to recoup that. I mean,
Right.
that's what
That add
flippers
value.
do. Well,
Right.
that's what flippers do all the time.
Right. They go in, they put in new lighting, they refresh everything, they upgrade bathrooms, kitchen, flooring, kind of windows, freshen things up. So that's what I was expecting to see when I opened the article. But it's interesting, it caused a smirk.
Yeah.
So anyway, and not everybody in New Mexico has a natural gas line. A lot of people are on propane. So I can see why people would want natural gas.
Natural gas. We are New Mexico. You got to have natural gas.
Yeah,
we are the natural gas state.
A lot of propane around our state.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, you had something else.
You're going to talk about how long people stay in their home.
We used to look at how long people would stay in homes, and we would say things like, oh, it's 6, 7, maybe 8 years. The thing that's interesting now is based on national data, in 2021, we peaked out where people were staying in their home for 13 years or more.
Wow.
On average, that's across the country, so it's different everywhere. Now, it's dropped back down, they're saying, in 2023 to 12 years. But that's still 12 years. People, on average, are staying in their home for 12 years.
Think about the reasons right now. I mean, why people could stay in their home longer. You used to have to move for work. A lot of people don't have to move for work now. They can work from home or be online to work and only have to show up to work at a business every once in a while. So we have one of those. We have somebody who works out of state, comes in for our big meetings and things and goes back.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't have to move. They can still work from afar. So some of that's happening. Plus just people are not needing to move.
Well, it's interesting. So it peaked out, kind of mid-pandemic, let's say, in early 2021 at 13 years, and now it's dropped down to just about 12 years. So it's pulled back. I suspect this is going to start ticking back up again because now we've had about a year and a half of these higher mortgage rates. So mid-22, mortgage rates went up a lot, more than double. And now people are saying, wait, I don't want to move out of that 4% mortgage. I don't want to move out of that 3% mortgage. So I think we're actually going to see these numbers tick up again, and people aren't going to be moving as often.
I would agree. I think the tick downward is there were people during the pandemic that didn't move, that waited. And once the pandemic was over, we saw people move. So that brought that number down a little bit.
Well, also in this survey, they looked at it in different communities. Unfortunately, Albuquerque doesn't make the list. A lot of times when you're talking about the top, even 50 metros, I think we're 61 in the country population-wise, or for our MSA. However, it's interesting that Los Angeles, San Jose, San Francisco, a lot of these California markets are very high on the list, and they're all very expensive markets. The other one that I thought was interesting, it's high on the list, was Cleveland, and average time on a home is 17 years. And I don't think of Cleveland as a expensive market. I think it's more of a moderate market. It's just kind of interesting. But California has a problem because of their Prop 13, which locks people in at a low tax rate.
Right.
And so if they don't sell their home, their
tax rate stays favorable.
Their tax rate stays favorable. New Mexico has something very similar. It's a 3% cap per year. If it's your primary residence, you're living in the house, your property taxes can only increase 3% per year, even if your home value has gone up a lot.
And in New Mexico, upon sale, the value of your property can become the value of what it really is. So the property taxes can go up significantly more than 3% upon sale for the new buyer.
Yeah, when I had Damian Laura here from the Bernalillo county tax assessor, we talked about that. When the property sells, you get reassessed, and you're gonna be taxed at the new value, whatever the new current value is.
Which is why, as realtors, we are required to have a document that discloses what the new tax could be based on the sale price, and the buyer has to sign off on that.
Yeah, and that goes back to
Tax lightning.
yeah, tax. Well, it's just another reason that people are going to stay in their homes longer, right? Their property taxes, if they look at and say, okay, my property taxes are going to go up, my interest rate is going to go up if I move, it's going to keep people in their house longer. And let's jump to that real quick. Just a quick look at the housing market here in Albuquerque.
Okay.
For this time of year, end of February, it's common that we'll start to see an increase in the number of homes coming on the market this time of year, going into March and so on. So far, we haven't seen it. So far, it's been pretty flat, the number of people listing their homes on the market. We're still very low inventory, not a whole lot of movement, not much different than what we saw last year, which was, to be honest, kind of a sluggish year in sales. And it looks like it's that way again. But we know the demand is there. The buyers are out there. They're looking for homes, but we still have limited supply. So it's a strange thing where we have limited supply. Or let me say it this way. We have low demand, but we still have very low supply. So they're both low, which means that you can't get movement in prices down because there's still demand for what we do have available. That was a very long way to say that, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I'm not sure I quite followed it, because I feel like there's plenty of demand based on how many houses are available for sale. So it's still a seller's market generally. We still have more buyers wanting to buy than we have homes for sale.
What she said, much more clear than what I said.
Yeah. There we go.
That was good. That was the ChatGPT summary of my long-winded explanation of how the market is. So
there we go.
Yeah. So if you're looking to buy, you just have to continue to be ready to go, because good homes do sell fast still in this market. And if you want to talk about real estate, that's what we do. We're the Venturi Group with Real Broker. You can reach us at 505-448-8888. Any last words, Tracy?
Have a great weekend. And if you see anything interesting at the home show, make sure to call us and tell us about it. I want to know what's going on, because we are going to be unavailable this weekend.
Yeah. That's a good problem now.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks
for
everybody.
joining.
Take care.